Hello, this is Mike. That iconic sound means that I just cracked open a cold one. We're getting ready to jump into another episode of Urban Legends and Conspiracies. And on a side note, if you want to know what I'm drinking, tonight's episode is brought to you by New Belgium Voodoo Ranger IPA. They're not a sponsor, but I do enjoy their beer, and if they enjoy what I'm doing and would love to sponsor me, I could work for beer. But on that note, let's get into tonight's episode. So we're going to start out tonight's episode a little differently with a story. This story takes place in Wyoming or New Mexico or Arizona, somewhere out west, but it totally takes place like in those places. So me and some guys were out in Wyoming, which is a state that I've totally been to. And we're working as ranch hands for the summer. So one evening, we're sitting around a campfire, and we're telling stories and drinking beer, and eventually we just start singing some songs. You might not know this, but when you're really bored, you end up singing a lot. So we're sitting there, and we get to the chorus of the song Pretty Fly for a White Guy by The Offspring, which was one of our most favorite songs to sing, when all of a sudden we hear this strange voice off in the distance. It's singing along to us. Funny thing is, it's a tenor off in the distance, and we're sitting there thinking, is somebody out there just screwing with us? What's going on? So my buddy Matt, he goes out there, he walks around the campsite, he doesn't see anybody. He thinks maybe it's just the effects of the alcohol messing with us. It's getting late, we don't think much of it. He comes back to the campsite and we just kind of blow it off. We don't really think about it until that next morning. So we wake up around sunrise at 7 a.m. the next morning, and we're having breakfast and we're kind of joking about the events of the previous night. Well, that's when old Bill comes up to us. And what you gotta know about old Bill is he's one of these old school cowboy, stereotypical kind of ranch hands. He was our boss at the time. And what he told us chilled us to the bone, because when we described to him what we heard, he just got that distant look on his face, and he says, well, you know what you encountered? Sounds like you encountered the infamous Jackalope, which is the subject of this episode today. And yes, that's a true story. I totally didn't make it up in the last 5 minutes. I've totally been to Wyoming. Actually, that's all a lie. I've never even ridden on a horse in my life or been west of the Mississippi, but it's a good story to open this episode with. So the jackalope, why are we talking about this? Well, it's probably because I haven't gotten around to the much requested Bigfoot episode yet, but this is a fun little urban legend that I personally enjoy. Plus, it was just a matter of time before I did an episode on death bunnies. Death Bunny is the logo of the series, and I feel it's a good way to kick off the Year of the Rabbit correctly. You don't want to incur the wrath of the jackalope during the Year of the Rabbit. So what is the jackalope? Where do they come from? Well, to put it simply, the jackalope is a mythical animal of North American folklore. It's described as a jackrabbit with antelope horns. However, most of the time when you see them depicted in taxidermy, they have just regular deer antlers. But we're just going to say that those are antelope horns. The word jackalope is basically a portmanteau of jackrabbit and antelope. And it was actually created long ago during a lightning storm when a frightened jackrabbit sought shelter from the storm near this place where this antelope was also seeking shelter from the storm. Well, the two fell in love, and they went on to make mini babies, these babies becoming the infamous jackalope. And if you're questioning the genetics of how that happened, I'm just going to say it was a mixture of lightning, magic, mythology, and the power of love. Now, while this is primarily an American myth, stories of horned rabbits actually go all the way back to the Persian Empire. One of the Persian empires, probably a very early one, because, my God, there's 500 Persian empires that came up throughout history, but I digress. They also appear in medieval European literature, and this is probably due to an actual kind of disease that some rabbits get, where they actually grow these horn-like growths on their face. But again, I digress. The modern myth actually comes from the 1930s in Wyoming, as a result of a couple of taxidermists having a little too much fun. Now, the official history doesn't say that alcohol was involved, but I mean, I'm pretty sure alcohol is involved in this. This isn't something you think up when you're sober, unless you're just a little bit insane. So as we established, the creature is purported to have the body of a jackrabbit and the horns of an antelope. It is elusive, powerful, and able to carry a tune. Yes, the jackalope can imitate singing in the voice of a tenor, nonetheless. I don't know why it's a tenor and not like a baritone or a mezzo-soprano or an alto or something like that. All the legends claim that it's a tenor. So according to the legends, these are very powerful creatures. They are very fast, even so fast that they are almost impossible to catch by humans. However, anyone who does accomplish to actually catch one should use extreme caution. One expert jackalope hunter actually suggests that one wear stovepipes on their legs. And for those who don't know what stovepipes are, think of like an old wood stove, the pipe that comes out of the top of it through the roof to like ventilate the smoke. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. You have to wear those on your leg. You have to armor your legs when dealing with a jackalope. Otherwise, if you're not wearing these, you risk your legs getting absolutely destroyed. Quote, kicked, clawed, and gored by this rabbit with antlers. And when you think about the legs, you got a lot of like arteries going through there, blood vessels and stuff. So you don't want to be the guy who died on the trail by bleeding out because you were trying to capture a jackalope and you didn't take the proper precaution. However, the jackalope does have one weakness. He has a fondness for whiskey. And while it doesn't say in the mythologies, I am almost certain that it is an American whiskey that the jackalope likes. Don't go out there with your authentic Irish whiskey. You're probably going to piss him off. Bring some American whiskey with you. The expert hunters of jackalopes say that if you leave a nice bottle of whiskey out, they'll become a lot easier to catch. And you want to catch jackalopes because the female jackalopes actually produce milk, which is sold in Wyoming for some reason. There is actually a product called jackalope milk in Wyoming you can buy. Whether or not it's got a whiskey taste, I don't know. I've never tried it. Now, not only are they fast, powerful, and have great taste in liquor, but we've already touched on this before, they are intelligent and they can understand human speech. And they will mimic the singing of humans in order to startle them back to their campfires while they're out roaming around. However, despite all that, the jackalope does have one weakness, which is primarily why we don't really find them outside of Wyoming or Arizona or Colorado or New Mexico, that general area. It's because the jackalope can only breed during lightning storms. So it kind of limits the amount of offspring it can produce. And with the advent of human hunting, it has brought the population into deep decline. So with that out of the way, we really have to ask ourselves, where does the myth of the jackalope really come from? We touched on this a little bit earlier, but now I'm going to go into depth. It all starts in the 1930s when the Herrick brothers, who were hunters with pretty good taxidermy skills, popularized this American jackalope myth by grafting deer antlers onto jackrabbit carcasses. Once again, whether or not alcohol was involved, it doesn't say in the histories, but I'm fairly certain that alcohol was involved in this endeavor. So he starts selling these taxidermy projects. It starts with a small hotel in Wyoming, and then he starts selling them out of South Dakota. And then there are a bunch of other guys that come around, and they kind of make copycats of the whole thing. And, you know, you have these jackrabbit, deer taxidermy things hanging in these hotels. Of course, that's going to spark stories. And that's kind of how it all emerges. And it's kind of like how Nessie kind of becomes a cultural phenomenon. It starts out as this little local thing that gets some publicity and some advertising attached to it, and then it just blows up into a big international sensation. In fact, it becomes so popular that there are several attempts to pass through the Wyoming state legislature a bill to make the jackalope the official mythological animal of the state of Wyoming, which after several attempts it finally did pass. So there you go. It is the official mythological animal of the state of Wyoming. which I think is awesome. Which makes me think if I should do some kind of mini segment on the official fictional animal of every single state. Let me know what you think in the comments. Or better yet, message me personally and tell me if you want to hear something like that. Of course, back to reality, a lot of folklorists see the jackalope as part of this group of tall-tale animals, which are known as fearsome critters, which is common in North American culture pretty much since the turn of the 20th century. These beasts appear in all these tall tales like the jackalope or hodags or giant snakes or even fur-bearing trout and others. And we might even get into a whole series of discussions on those various topics as well. So what's the overall legacy of the jackalope? Well, the jackalope is an amazing and fun tourist attraction for the state of Wyoming, especially in the town of Douglas, Wyoming, where this whole thing kind of got its start. Several companies use jackalope imagery or the jackalope taxidermy things in order to sell products. Even the state of Wyoming makes money off of selling, quote, official jackalope hunting permits. These tags are good for hunting during the official jackalope season, which occurs for only one day, June 31st, from midnight to 2 a.m. However, the hunter must have an IQ greater than 50, but not over 72. And thousands of these have been sold, and it's probably a good thing because I can't imagine in Wyoming there's a lot of places where small towns like Douglas can raise a lot of money for projects and whatnot. Also, if you're ever traveling through Douglas, Wyoming, be sure to stop at the 8-foot statue. That's 2.4 meters for anybody outside of the U.S. Statue of a jackalope. And the town hosts an annual Jackalope Days celebration in early June, so be sure to check that out if for whatever reason you happen to be in Wyoming of all places. Of course, I can't really say much. I am from Ohio. A lot of people think Ohio is just some boring flyover state that has nothing but corn and cows. However, there's tons of awesome stuff to do in Ohio. I'm sure there's tons of awesome stuff to do in Wyoming too. It's just I've never been there. When I picture it in my mind, I just think of it as nothing but prairies and cowboys and jackalopes, of course. Of course, I did see on a realty site one time that they were selling tons of land for super cheap. So if you want tons of good, cheap land that's probably farmable, yeah, Wyoming might be the place to go. However, on that note, I do think I'm going to end it here. Thank you for listening. Tell me what you think about the jackalope, or reach out to me, tell you what you think about the new season. I am experimenting a lot this season with different styles and things. We will get around to a Bigfoot episode. I promise. I am working on that. That is a huge project, so it's going to take a while. In the meantime, you can catch me here every Tuesday with a new episode of 5-Minute Mythologies. I'm actually having a lot of fun doing those. I have a lot of them kind of on the back burner piled up. They're a lot easier to make than these episodes. And then twice a month on Thursdays for Urban Legends and Conspiracies with Mike. And as always, if you did like this episode, definitely give me some feedback. Share it with your friends if they're interested in the subject matter. Anything and everything like that just helps the show grow. And if you want to support me directly, I do take donations. I have tons of credit card debt I would love to pay off. But hey, if you want to send me beer, reach out to me. I do enjoy beer. That's the fuel for this podcast. And even if you have an idea that you want me to cover, just shoot me a message. I respond to pretty much any feedback I get with this little project. It's what motivates me to do more. But on that note, I do thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.